And we're back with another edition of the Astro Weather. It's me, Robert Phoenix. And today we have a user photo. This is the second user photo in 2 days. Yesterday we had Witt's lovely sunscape from New Mexico. And this is from Genevieve. And I believe the state is Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. It could be elsewhere, but we're just going to call it Georgia for now. Looking very wintry behind me. So, good morning to everybody. We got a good crew here. We got 57 people in the house. Well, today is the last Astro Weather I'll be doing from this location. It'll be very interesting doing it from the new location. How do I say this? The atmosphere is just very different. Very different. I mean, here I got a window that I'm looking out into this yard, and then we got a big cornfield across the way, and then there's the steady stream of travelers on the highway in the distance. And in the next space, it'll be just like a regular studio where I'll be looking at a wall, which is it's fine. But at least there will be a studio, and we'll be able to continue the operation, as it were. So this is it. We got this, and we have a 15 minutes of flame. The link. Some of you have asked for the link to be put into the show notes, which I did today. So if you're interested in joining us over in 15 minutes, there's the link in the show notes. And I think Tom might have put the link in the chat over here. Thanks for all the good wishes and good vibes for the moving and the relocation. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Just saying. Just saying. It's an interesting time with Saturn transiting the old fourth house. Do you guys believe in feng shui? This place is supposed to be very good for feng shui. This is why one of the reasons why we chose this place, because supposedly in February the feng shui was tremendous for this place. So I got this. Well, thanks, Pam, or thank you, Janine. Leave shirt says yes. Olga says yes. Yes to feng shui. There we go. We got all feng shuied about it. You know what happened yesterday? I don't know if you guys paid attention to this, but let me bring this up. This was one of these moments where, as an astrologer or somebody who uses astrology to notice and predict trends, yesterday was a big hit. Yesterday was a big hit. I'll tell you why. Let me bring this up. So why don't we start here today? By the way, don't forget to hit the like, and don't forget to stay subscribed. If you look in the comments from yesterday's show, somebody checked whether or not they were subscribed, and sure enough, they weren't subscribed. They had been subscribed, but they were unsubscribed. So make sure you stay subscribed and that you get the notifications. It's just a bizarre game that we play with these media gatekeepers. All right, so check this out. U.S. markets surge as Fed signals rate cuts on the way. What did I say yesterday? This is one of those moments where I get to say I talked about it the day that it happened. I don't do this often, But remember, I said the Fed was going to talk about lowering interest rates, and I questioned it. Like, well, would they do that? Well, what's interesting is that they're forecasting into the future and saying Jerome Powell, who is the figurehead of the Fed, saying that they're going to lower interest rates 3 times in 2024. And I just thought, that's interesting. That is interesting. This is the U.S. market surge as Fed signals rate cuts on the way. So if you're paying attention to that, you would have noticed that. Robert gets to say, yeah, every now and then you got to stand up and say, yeah, that's what I talked about. Did any of you guys notice that? William Pals, thank you. This is a great comment right here. If I was in Austin, I'd be helping you move, Robert. Thank you, Pete. William. Appreciate that. I have experienced the reality of it. Yes. Believe in feng shui. Well, we've got this place feng shuied up. Totally feng shuied up. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I lost a lot of money on puts yesterday. Can't believe the market went up on this news. I think investors are hungry, and I think they're looking for anything that resembles good news, even though it may not be interpreted that way, Jeff. It doesn't matter. It's Axios. Yeah, there you go. Well, it was just what popped up. There's more. I could have used Yahoo. I could have used any number of sources. Susie says, I knew Robert was right because I follow the market in Bitcoins. Vertex is about to be triggered. Election years bring down prices of gas, groceries, of all of it. Who'd have thought? Exactly. Julie Moss said hi. Yep, same thing with subscribing. I'm for 3 times in a week. Can you believe that shit? 3 times in a week. Robert gets to say thanks to Joan. Long way to get there, but you got there. Going to refi my cabin if the rates go below 5.5. No one is buying U.S. bonds. That would be pretty too much money. That could all be true, but I was still right. And it really, so we'll use this as kind of a lesson in astrology. Because when I was looking at that aspect, it was like I slowed down. Because what I try to do is I try to get into a stream of consciousness and have things pop in the stream of consciousness. But when I looked at that, I slowed down and was just trying to understand the sort of the fundamental principles of what we're looking at with the moon in Capricorn specifically. Speaking of fundamental principles, we've got this impeachment thing going on, and astrologically, it happened on the new moon, which would put that new moon in the ascendant of the U.S. chart. Not only that, but transiting Mars is right on the ascendant of the U.S. chart. And it's interesting because I think this week the trailer for A24 came out, which is this movie about the upcoming theoretical civil war, right? So within a span of a week, we've had just a crazy amount of predictive programming, all linked up to astrological transits. The film on Netflix that is all about the power down grid and what happens after that. That happened during the balsamic moon in Scorpio, and it brought up a lot of fear for people, like a lot of fear, and and fixed attitudes and fixed beliefs. So that was interesting that it really popped during this last weekend. And then this whole A24 thing pops, and transiting Mars is right on the US ascendant in Sagittarius. And some people just continue to belittle astrology. All right, let's get into today's weather. Okay, here we go. All right, looking good. There's that Mars, and it's right on the US ascendant right now in the Sibley chart. And I'm going to talk about this on 15 minutes. The House of Biden is under fire. Both Joe and Hunter, they're coming after him. I'll talk more about this again on 15 minutes. The link is in the show notes. Somebody is behind all of this, and they want to push Biden out. They want to push Biden, and Biden's. It's not just Biden, but it's Biden. It's not like he's one man alone. One senile, stodgy old man who has doubles, cutouts, and clones that they bring along to the party every now and then. There are people behind Biden. There's a team behind Biden. There's an infrastructure that is embedded in the crime family. These are people that profit off of whatever the Bidens bring in. You think that the Bidens just keep all the money for themselves? No, you've got to pay tribute. You have to pay tribute to the other families, or else they'll run you out of business. So some family, and perhaps in conjunction with maybe somebody in the House of Biden, but certainly one family. And when I say family, I'm talking about organized crime families, because that's what they are, has decided that it's time to put an end to the Biden reign in the White House. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because we'll find out what kind of stomach the mainstream media has and will have in defending Biden. That's going to be interesting to watch. If anything, that'll be interesting to watch. All right, so here we go. Mars is moving more into that square with Neptune. Be aware of the Mars Neptune square, especially when Neptune is in the lair of the twins. The Mars Neptune square is one of those transits where it looks like we're winning, but we're not. There's a lot of illusion around. So just we're going to blow it up and look at it from the mundane level, which is, it looks like, oh, look, we're winning. Look at this. Alex Jones is back. Yay. He's going to have his own, he's going to stream InfoWars on X. Yay. Right. We're winning. Yay. Be careful around that. Now, there's a term called a Pyrrhic victory, although I don't think it really fits this term or it fits this situation. But there is something with this Mars Neptune square which is deceptive. And we are into things like ideology and truth and sovereignty and all the things that theoretically we all hold dearly, but not everybody can always agree upon. Um, that's what Mars and Sagittarius represents. And the square with Neptune it diffuses the potency of that, but it also brings with it a certain amount of illusion. And the Sagittarian energy is really strong because we have the Sun and Mars. So it feels like we're galloping along and gaining ground. And in actuality, that's not necessarily true. It appears to be true, but it's not necessarily true. Now, I'm of the mind that energy is energy. And if you want to use the energy, that's fine. If it's inspiring to you or it feels like that, it's a crack in the wall, um, fine. Don't get attached to the personalities, which is hard for people to do. And I talked about this in 2016 with Trump. I said, look, ride the energy, don't get attached to the personality. But we live in a world that worships personality. I mean, the digital paparazzi can't wait long enough to find a new face to focus on and bring our attention to it and drain off all of our resources, emotional resources, like Taylor Swift, right? She's at the height of the cult of person, and she's a plant. She's been placed there. This whole thing with the NFL and Travis Kelce is fake as fuck. It's a way to feminize the NFL and to put somebody in the mix who is extremely popular with a rabid fan base with this idea that they're going to uh, flip the fan base and get them to start watching football because Tay watches football. But that's only part of it. The other part of it is that they want to put a woman, and some people will dispute the fact whether or not Taylor Swift is actually a woman, but they will put a woman at the top of the hierarchy of the NFL. And I forget who it was. Might have been, I know it was Joe Namath, or there was somebody famous who came out and said, this is bullshit. Why are you doing this intense cross marketing with Taylor Swift and has nothing to do with football? And Roger Goodell, who's a Pisces, and drinks like a fish, said basically, fuck off. We know what we're doing for football. But again, it's kind of illusionary, right? This is all, especially because Mars represents the warrior caste or the warrior class. And when Neptune squares it, there's a diminishing of the potency of Mars. So just be careful around where you're bringing your attention to, right? And who you're aligning with. I started killing my idols a long time ago. And it was one of the best things I could ever do. Right. And you can see people in the media, like Jason Whitlock is totally guilty of this. Jason Whitlock is always looking for somebody in the mainstream, in the public eye, that reflects his perspective and his values. And when that happens, it feels like, oh, wow, we're winning. Look at this. There's somebody who's managed to sneak behind enemy lines and represent who we are or who I am. And usually when that happens, it's only briefly. And then they're back to some other bullshit. So just be aware of where you're putting your energy and what you're putting it into. This is important. Build up areas where you're weak. It's so for me with the Mars Neptune square, it's like you've got the Sun and Mars here, sort of the wind at your sails, and it's easy to kind of again sit back, rest on your laurels, not press the throttle. That's another part of this. That would be a mistake. This is a time to address the weaknesses in your life where you're vulnerable and work on them. It's easier. It's much easier with Mars coming in here and trining Aries. We're not going to have a fire Mars transit for a while, right? We'll have, it'll take Mars to be all the way over here in Leo to come in and make that trine. In the meantime, at some point, it's going to come in next year and conjunct Chiron. I don't think that's the time where you may become painfully aware of your weaknesses during that time. So work on them now, right? It's a much easier flow. The moon has moved into Capricorn. We talked about Mercury retrograde yesterday, and we talked about the thing with the interest rates with the moon in Capricorn. And what were we looking at? I think it was it was the trine with Jupiter. It was the moon here in Capricorn, Mercury retrograde, and then trine with Jupiter. That's what the aspects were, which led to that discussion about the Fed and interest rates being lowered. So today is a sober day, a sober, somber winter day. All the leaves are brown and the sky is gray. Moon conjunct Mercury. You're in touch with your feelings today, but you may not like what you find. Sorry. It's true, though. You're in touch with your feelings today, but you may not like what you find or feel. And usually, communication with a moon like this, because the moon is still fairly new and you've got this retrograde. Um, how do I say this? I don't think I don't think it's a I don't think it's a command or demand to keep your feelings inside. That said, you should, I think, be thoughtful and Capricornian about who you share your feelings with, because again, with this moon square to Chiron now, it's energy that people can use against you, right? And if you're in this place and you're kind of introspecting about what's going on in your life, long term plans, uh, and then you've got this square with Chiron going on, and you decide, well, let me call up so and so or text so and so, and they always make me feel better. I'm not here to play an uh, agent of fortune here, but watch out for mistrust or not fully comprehending who you're sharing things with. That's not to say that you can't be vulnerable, because that's what we get into with Chiron and Aries, right? And these squares going on. But I think you really have to vet the process. And one of the things that is really good with communication is if you feel like the person you're communicating with or sharing with is trustworthy and reasonable, which is, I think, two factors that are really important. You can, and this is not necessarily done out of any kind of gamesmanship, but you can implicate people in your conversation. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're trying to establish something or get something off your chest or um, address a fear, to dislodge what's going on with this rather austere and arid conjunction, you ask the other person that you're having a conversation with, what would X feel like? Or if you were in this situation, what would you do? And you don't have to explain your situation per se. But what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to get the other person to establish their emotional ground and their what they think or what their role would be in a similar life situation, one that would mirror and reflect yours. And you don't have to go into your story. You can sort of start to talk and then kind of unwind it and ask them, well, what do you think of this? What would you do? How would this make you feel? And now they're on the record. And you've brought them into the conversation. You've kind of made it an even playing field in some ways. Because usually what happens is that if a person has an issue or a problem, in most cases, it immediately establishes a hierarchy in communication. One person has an issue and a problem, and the other person doesn't. Automatically, the person who does not have the issue and the problem is on another level hierarchically because they're not suffering. Whereas the other person who's bringing this up is suffering. So it's the nature of the human experience. So what you want to do is you want to get people on the record so that instead of it being a hierarchical shared, now it's more horizontal and there's an even playing field because it also sets up a field of empathy. And then later on, if there's any blowback from the conversation, because it is Mercury retrograde, you can always say that when we talked about this, this was your position. This is what you said. This is how you thought you would handle a situation like this. And they say, yeah, you're right. You're right. Now, just because you're right doesn't necessarily mean that it'll make a difference in the outcome or the relationship, but it depends on the person. Some people say, yeah, you're right. And, I gave you the best advice that I could. And if I were in your situation, that's what I would have done. So this is what I'm talking about here. If you're going to have conversations today where you're going to make yourself be in a vulnerable position, level the playing field and start an inquiry with people. And you don't even have to bring up your situation. And the interesting thing about this is that in some ways, you may even solve your own dilemma without even bringing up your situation, just by hearing somebody else and saying, oh, yeah, well, that's interesting. Or, wow, this person's a fucking idiot. I'll never talk to them again. Right. So this is one of those days. Inquiry is always, but you have to be a little sophisticated about it. Right. You remember those TV series from like the late 50s, like Leave It to Beaver, and Beaver would sit down and say, gee, Dad, I have this friend, and this friend got something from another friend, and he found out that his friend had stolen the thing that this other friend was given. And this friend that I know, he doesn't know what to do about it. Right. Do you remember? I mean, and immediately Ward would know. He'd be like, oh, yeah, Beaver, you're the friend, aren't you? You want to avoid that. You got to be a little deft, engage in some conversation if you're going to go down this path. Right. If you're going to go down this path. Today is one of those days where I feel like people feel less secure. They feel less secure about their institutions, whatever they are. And Jesus, we're living in a time of huge insecurity. Like I think that the paranoia and anxiety meters are off the charts. Like, can we get any higher here? I think we'll find out. Today's one of those days. Now, the other thing is that you can have a realignment emotionally very quickly. Because what is Capricorn really good at doing? It's Capricorn's really good at doing the same thing every day. Right? That's how Capricorn makes the climb up the mountain. It does the same thing every day. It's disciplined, it's focused, it is engaged in a daily structure that over time chips away and creates success. It's the nature of Capricorn. And there's a beauty to that. And then there's the rut. So here we go with Uranus here, trining the moon and trining Mercury. It's also a way to get out of that rut, to look at your experience from a very, very different angle and to go about it in a more novel way, a more novel approach. There's the challenge with us as humans is that we get stuck in the binary world. This has nothing to do with gender. We get stuck in the binary world. Well, there's only this. If there's this, the only other possible outcome is that. And that's not true. That's not true. There's something in between, right? There's a third option or a second option if this is only one option. And Uranus here with the trine to the moon today is like, hey, what are your other options? What are your other options? How can you change your emotional state very quickly? Because that's what Uranus does, right? It's lightning speed. It's really interesting. We also have the moon trining Jupiter. And I think overall that's not a bad aspect. It certainly expands the potential of the moon. But I think people are really looking for physical solutions, monetary solutions, things that they can, put in the ground. Even with Uranus, because Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus does traffic in abstraction to some degree, right? Even with Uranus, it's still in an Earth sign. So no matter how you kind of reframe your emotional content and see it from a different light or a different perspective, it still, in some ways, has to be tangible and connected to the so-called real world. Venus has moved past Pallas, but is still in this wide trine. I think this is the last day of this trine with Saturn. So tomorrow, Venus moves out of that trine. Long-standing contracts, shore them up today, because after that, it moves on a bit. And and what you want to do is you want to take care of your responsibilities. Venus comes into Scorpio, later degree, trines Neptune, and there's more fun. Be the ant, not the grasshopper. Let's see. Anything else? Yeah. Do we want to get to Jupiter, Pluto? It's interesting. I think the Jupiter Pluto square, could get you into a pit of overspending and overextending your credit. Just watch out for that. And that's been ongoing for a while. That's like not new news. Okay, there you go. There's your Astro Weather. Let's get into our star of the day. Let me bring it up here. Now, today is an interesting day because the most obvious choice would have been Nostradamus, because today is theoretically Nostradamus' birthday. Where the hell did that go? Oh, shit. I had this thing up here. I feel I've talked about Nostradamus before. And first of all, his chart is a double D. When when it comes to astrology, double D is not considered good. Maybe I put this thing in the trash. Hold on. Which I didn't want to do. Today is what, the 14th. I did this thing this morning. Damn. And now it's not here. No, that's not it. That was the star of the day that I did for a client. And now I don't even, there's this chart. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to spitball this thing. Total spitball moment here because I can't find my black rectangle. All right, here we go. Uno momentito. Yes, we're improvising. Okay. Let's do this. Just call me on the fly guy. All right. I took care of it. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. And let's do the share. And it's in black and white. That's interesting. Let me get my banner up here. I guess it's fitting because it's a black and white photo. So today's star of the day is Jimmy Doolittle. Now, I was going to do Nostradamus. It's the obvious choice. But last year, I did a deep dive on Nostradamus. And once you understand more about Nostradamus, the sketchier Nostradamus becomes. First of all, he plagiarized most of his material for the quatrains. That's been established. Secondly, his reputation as an astrologer was not good. Like he had both post-historical and present-day critics of his work, his astrological work, considered sloppy. And my feeling about Nostradamus is that he's kind of an agent. I don't want to get too deeply into it because I've done it before. And I think a lot of what he was doing was like an early version of The Simpsons, if you know what I mean. That's for another show. Let's talk about Jimmy Doolittle. Jimmy Doolittle was a World War II hero. Like he's considered to be one of the great fighter pilots in American history. And what's interesting, and again, I wanted to get a sense, like wanted to, anytime I do this, I want to be able to demonstrate parts of this chart that are explicit. So one of the things that we have here is we have Mars on the ascendant. And by the way, Jimmy Doolittle was mostly in the Pacific Theater. In fact, I think solely Pacific Theater. He has Mars in Gemini on the ascendant, right? What is Mars? It's an air sign. I'm sorry, what is Gemini? It's an air sign. What is Mars? Mars is the planet of the warrior. And Doolittle was also, he was 5'8", but he was also a boxer. Like he was a tough guy. Jimmy Doolittle was a tough guy back in the days when they made tough guys. So you can see the pugilistic tendencies, the feisty Mars Gemini energy. Like this guy has got the fucking perfect chart to be a fighter pilot. He was the first pilot to fly solely by instruments, meaning that there was no visual, right? And to me, that's Neptune on the ascendant in Gemini. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you're flying blind, which is what he was doing. So he was the first pilot to fly solely by instruments. He's got this insane kill rate in the Pacific Theater. He led one of the major bombing runs on Tokyo. He was like the lead plane, right? And he's got a Mars-Pluto conjunction. So he's kind of a merchant of death. And he has Venus in Aquarius and the true node in Aquarius. And it's interesting because it's the ninth house, and that's where he makes his bones, right? He makes his bones outside of the country. He makes his bones in Japan, in the Pacific Theater. And I'm not saying that he lacks empathy, but if you're going to have somebody, be a hired killer with wings, this would be a chart. Because air does not dip frequently into the realm of deep emotion. It's fast, it's spontaneous. In Aquarius, it's detached. So there's very little judgment, I think, around his role. Now, I do think he had a loving and devoted life partner and family. There's no history of divorce in his record. He died at his son's home in Pebble Beach in his 90s. So he has Jupiter in the fourth house in Virgo. They say that the sign on your fourth house cusp, or what's in your fourth house, determines your end of life game, right? He's got Leo there. He's with his son. He's with a child. And he probably died in relative comfort, right? The other thing about Jimmy Doolittle is, and we're going to pay attention here to Neptune, is that he became, I believe, the vice president or president of Gulf Oil. See, this is what happens when you're a war hero coming out of World War II. People want you. They want you on your board. They want you, in the conversation about the company. Neptune rules oil, right? Neptune rules oil. So he's got a very interesting chart when it comes to just looking at him from a fighter pilot, a merchant of death, flying blind with Neptune on the ascendant, dying in the comfort and the luxury of his son's home with Jupiter and Virgo. And he's got Moon in Aries. And, this is, again, if you wanted to wire somebody who was going to be good at, flying, fighting, killing, you'd probably want to have the Moon in Aries, especially if it's trining the sun in your chart, right? It's fast. There's no hesitation. And in war, you hesitate in war, you're done. You're done. So he excelled in his role as a fighter pilot. And even after that, he excelled in his life because he had the right connections and wound up becoming very, very, very wealthy as a result of his wartime connections. Not a lot of Earth. And that's another exposition of the chart. If he had more Earth, who knows? Maybe he would have joined the Army. Okay. There's your True Hemp Science star of the day, Jimmy Doolittle, an American hero. Now, remember, True Hemp Science is the only sponsor of the show besides myself, Robert Phoenix, where you can go to robertphoenix.com and book a reading. If you order $100 or more from our good friend Chris at truehempscience.com and type in 15 mins, 15 MINS, you will get free product with your CBD order. $150 or more get you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. So there you go. All right, I'm going over to 15 minutes. Feel free to join us over there. We got a good crowd. A lot of the same people that are in chat here show up over there. And we're going to be looking at the fall of the Biden crime family. And we'll do it for about an hour. And then the last full day of the compound. All right. I'll be back hopefully Sunday night. If I do Sunday night, it will not be in the new location. But hopefully we'll be back on Sunday night. And clearly hopefully we'll be up and ready to go by Monday night for serious sports. And I would say the outlier for coming back would be Tuesday morning. But we should be ready. I got the cable all hooked up. I just need to get everything into place and into order. And that's it. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a very blessed day and do God's work. Bye for now.